Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the Disney Plus Marvel Television second season of Daredevil Born Again, Episode 1, entitled The Northern Star. The second season sees, no pun intended, blind vigilante Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil, gathering allies to resist Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. Kingpin, who is the mayor of New York City, and his Anti-Vigilante Task Force. Returning this season, you have Charlie Cox as Daredevil, as well as Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk, Deborah Ann Woll as Karen Page, and a list of others. This is probably the best Daredevil episode I've seen on Disney Plus, period. I'm not prepared to say best Daredevil episode overall, which includes the Netflix series, but in recent memory, this is probably the best Daredevil episode of television I've seen. This season started off with a bang. First and foremost, is a vast improvement from season one. Season one was good. It was decent as far as a show, but it just didn't feel Daredevil-ish because, number one, you didn't get a lot of Daredevil in Daredevil Born Again. You got a lot of Matt Murdock, don't get me wrong, but not a lot of Daredevil. This season, this episode in particular, they made it known that this is a Daredevil season here. We open the show with Daredevil and we close the episode with Daredevil. And he never looked better than he did on this particular episode. The action sequences was shot very well. This episode was directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who are also co-showrunners along with Dario Scardepan. I believe I'm saying his name right. They're taking over as showrunners. They took over midway in the first season, and you can tell the shift when the first season played out. You know, it was a different tone, and this episode, it was the tone that I was hoping for going into this season. Let's start off talking about the action, since I already scratched that surface. The action this episode went all in, man. I mean, this was some brutal fights. The choreography was on the next level in this episode. It probably had more action packed in this one episode than in the entirety of season one, and that is crazy to think about. I was just like, man, but yet and still, there was a lot of story. There was a lot of dialogue heavy scenes throughout this episode, but the action was next level, especially for Disney Plus kind of R-rated show, you know, as far as Marvel is concerned. But I did enjoy the action sequences. The fight choreography was top notch, and we didn't miss a beat there. Charlie Cox, he steps right back into the Matt Murdock role. I think he was born to play Matt Murdock. I really believe that there's nobody else, and I didn't know much about Charlie Cox before Daredevil on Netflix. I think I've seen him in one thing prior to that, but he was born to play this role. It's just nobody else that can play this as well as he does, man. He delivers another strong performance here. The chemistry, but between every actor that he's across the set to, he's great with. He's great with Deborah Ann Woll. Of course, he's always great with Vincent D'Onofrio, even though they don't share a scene in this episode, but just using it as an example. But him and Karen Page, I love the dynamic there. Speaking of which, We finally get to see the romantic link up between those two. And if anybody is a follower of the comics and have read the actual Born Again comic run, you know where this is heading. And I'm not gonna I'm not gonna spoil it for anybody. But speaking of Karen Page, Deborah Ann Woll, she really stood out as Karen Page. It looks like she's going to have much more to do this season, being as though she was only in, what, 1.5 episodes last season. But she has a lot more to do going into this season. And this episode sets up precisely what I was alluding to as far as the comic run is concerned. And so prepare to be emotional with that. The supporting cast, it gets enough time to shine as well. James Gandolfini's son, what's his name? He's the deputy mayor on the show. It looks like he's found his footing. He started off a little rough last season, but it looked like he's coming within his own now in this role. In this episode, Vincent D'Onofrio, he felt like Kingpin this season. You know, when he got out of that SUV at the beginning of this episode, yeah, he felt like Kingpin. You know, when he was talking and barking orders to his little henchmen, yeah, it felt Kingpin. And dare I say, the character that I hated the most last season, Heather, the psychiatrist, actually liked her in this episode, because it felt like she has a role other than bouncing all over the place like she did in season 1. I'm actually invested in her character now because she's dealing with the trauma of having almost being killed by Muse last season, and we see that she's getting PTSD from that. She's starting to drink a bit, you know, now that she's working for Fisk. She's a little more corrupt. And so there's a lot more to her there that it is interesting. And I'm happy to see that. I was actually enjoying her on screen as opposed to last season. I guess the theme of this episode was improvement. And I'm not trying to poo-poo on the showrunners from season 1, because like I said, season 1 was fine. It was a decent season. It just didn't quite get there. You know, it was something missing. And it looks like the current showrunners know Daredevil, know what it's all about, know what he's all about, and know what this world is. And they're doing a fantastic job so far. Granted, it's only 50 minutes into this season, but man, what an improvement. What an improvement. This was a very exciting episode. I'm happy about it. Happy to see Matthew Lillard in this show, man. Old Stu from Scream, man. It's good to see him in the show. What's his character all about, Mr. Charles? Is there something more sinister? Of course, there's something sinister about him because he's working with Kingpin. But what's really going on there? They're kind of keeping that under wraps for us. We got a quasi Bullseye cameo, you know, at the end of the episode by saving Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock got unmasked by this task force, and they knew who he was. They found out who he was, and all of a sudden, knives come flying into the apartment and killing them all. With one knife falling in front of Matt Murdock that says, "You're welcome," with a bullseye symbol on it. Mwah, beautiful. And that's how the episode went off. But right before that, we see that Cherry was having a heart attack, which was distracting Daredevil. That's how the task force got the upper hand on him. But what's going to be the end result with him? Will he survive or will he pass away? Which would be a big blow to Matt Murdock, because he doesn't have too many alliances that can operate in the normal world, because he's in hiding, him and Karen Page at this time. So that's that adds a level of intrigue to the rest of this season. There's a lot going on. There's a lot that's been set up and a lot that has already happened that is exciting to see. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to seeing this season is the lead up to Spider-Man Brave New World. Oh, I keep saying that. Spider-Man Brand New Day. Because this is supposed to kind of lead into that. Not necessarily be Spider-Man be a continuation of this story, but let's not forget all this is taking place in New York. Spider-Man is swinging around somewhere in New York while all this is going on. And so some way is going to be linked up. We saw in the Spider-Man trailer that the Hand is in that trailer and Spider-Man is going to be facing off against them. And we know that the Hand are the adversary of Daredevil. So there's a lot there. There's a lot of meat on this bone that this show will have to kind of introduce to us. Now, I'm not relying on this show to set up any grander thing in the MCU, not even Spider-Man. It doesn't even have to be linked up to Spider-Man, but it is interesting that the Hand was heavily featured in that trailer. And, if you look at the color grading, this was another thing I was paying attention to in this episode. A lot of people mention the color grading of the Spider-Man trailer is not as colorful as the previous three films. It's kind of gray and moody. And when you look at Daredevil, especially this episode, it has that same color grade. Is that gray, moody type feel. So there's possibly a link here somewhere. Maybe I'm fishing. Maybe it's hopeful thinking. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But even if none of that comes to fruition, I don't care. Because this episode so far, season so far, looks good. It looks promising. I am super excited. If you can't tell, absolutely loved episode 1 of Daredevil Born Again season 2. I would love to know your thoughts. Are you excited? Did this scratch the itch? Did you get reinvigorated by this show as far as the MCU is concerned? I know there's been a lot of defectors, because the MCU has not been delivering at the level that we are used to, grown accustomed to in the past. But hopefully this can get the ball rolling until we get to Spider-Man and then get led into Doomsday. And then in between all that, I don't want to not mention Punisher. Punisher, he's not getting his own show, but he is getting his own special, a 1 hour presentation on Disney Plus. They dropped the poster for that either yesterday or today. I can't remember. I seen it today though. So I think that's in May. So it's probably going to be right after this show wraps up or something like that. So we'll see. There's a lot more. There's a lot more going on, and I like the fact that we're kind of leaning heavy into the street level of it all in the MCU. We've been so cosmic and big world threats. We've grown accustomed to that, but Marvel comics, some of the best comics at street level. With Spider-Man is mainly street level. Punisher is street level. Daredevil is street level. I want those type. I want to get to that. All the cosmic fighting Thanos and fighting the Kree and the Skrulls and all that good stuff. That's fine, but I want to see some street level violence. But I'm getting it here on Daredevil season 2. I want to know your thoughts. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also, don't forget about YouTube. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for the Daredevil Born Again Season 2, Episode 1, which is currently on Disney Plus. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.